My name is Fred Copestake. I like to think I'm not a dinosaur. I have been around for a little bit, so certainly from a training point of view, I've been working in this for the last 22 years. Been around the world 14 times doing that. I've worked in 36 countries. I've trained over 10,000 salespeople. So it's a real kind of privilege to have done that stuff. But what it's also helped me do is to recognize some of the challenges that salespeople have. That's what led me to write my first book, Selling Through Partnering Skills, where I addressed some of the challenges that I can see across different sectors, different countries, and different even types of selling. The challenges that we talk about there are busy, 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 oldie worldy, and muddled mindset. So this is the stuff where salespeople are running around, doing lots of stuff, really, really active, but not necessarily effective. Oldie worldy is using techniques, is using ways of working that just don't work anymore. Ineffective as well, but also potentially annoying to customers. And so this is about helping people to get better at what they do. The muddled mindset is where a salesperson can get caught between, am I transactional or am I consultative? And I need to be helping customers, but equally I need to make sales. And so often management don't help this because they're confusing people in what they should be doing. In the first book, we look at how we can deal with that by helping people get more effective, helping them get more up to date, and helping them become more aligned in the way that they operate. That was great. So I wrote that, and it came out in 2020. Happy days. Beginning of 2020, all ready to go. And of course, things happened that caused a massive change. Massive changes went on. So I'm all about helping good people do good things in a good way. It was all about helping people with this evolution of sales. But like I say, in 2020, it's like somebody pressed the fast forward button. Those challenges were layered up on top by some other things that we start to see. So really, for me, this kind of evolution of sales has sped up that we have to get our head around. So that's why I very quickly put writing head back on and put together hybrid selling. So the book Hybrid Selling is about looking at these next set of challenges that salespeople are also facing. So the challenges that we're seeing now, on top of those ones I've just briefly mentioned, are all to do with change. So these are to do with customer changes, the climate of selling change, and change changing. So yeah, kind of sounds a bit paradoxical, but we'll talk about what those mean. So when we talk about customer changes, the kind of things that are making these happen are that customers are more advanced, they're more biased, they're more confused. So by more advanced, what I'm talking about is that customers are further down the buying cycle. They've got more information. They're more sophisticated than ever. The stuff is out there. And salespeople are going to have to add a different type of value. Salespeople are also customers are also more biased. And by that, what I mean, they're biased towards the things that they like. Another way of putting this would be that they're more demanding. They've got higher expectations. They know what they like what they want, and they're going to do things to try to be consistent with that. A lot of them will try to solve their own problems. And so with being more advanced and more biased gives more challenges to salespeople to try to do the right thing for customers. However, there is a paradox in that customers are also more confused. We live in confusing times. There's lots of stuff going on that none of us have ever had to deal with. And so this is something that they're trying to get their heads around. I like to use the acronym VUCA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That's something, it's an old military expression, military model from back in the end of the Cold War, where the military weren't sure really now who the enemy was, how the enemy act, what they need to do. But it absolutely applies in the world that we're living in now as salespeople. Now, customers are facing volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So there are opportunities for us to help with that. When I talk about the climate change, I'm not talking about the environment as such, but it's the climate of selling. So again, this is broken down into a number of areas where we can start to see challenges that salespeople need to overcome. And one of these is choosing the right type of sale to get involved with. There are so many types of sales that salespeople need to work out how they need to operate, it can be incredibly confusing for them. We talk about full cycle sales, or we talk about the SDR AE type setup. We talk about classic selling, consultative selling, value-based selling, enterprise selling, strategic selling. We talk about the negotiation skills, key account management, customer success management. There's lots and lots of different ways that people can approach this job. And it can be very confusing if someone's getting lots and lots of different information, different ways in which they're being encouraged to work. And we need to make sure they're doing the right thing at the right time. There's different techniques aligned with this. So again, some sales companies, some salespeople are still trying to sell through using brute force. They're trying to push, push, push. They're trying to hammer their way home. Others are far more customer centric. They'll focus in on the customer, their needs, their wants, their issues, their concerns. Some salespeople still think it's a good idea to be a tricky dicky kind of classic salesperson that we often get tarred with that brush. Others are very professional. We talk about salespeople being very prepared, being very proactive, being passionate, proud. So many different ways that we can go about doing this job. And of course, technology. Technology's got a huge impact to play on modern selling. So many things that a salesperson can now use to support what they're doing. And some of the things which can be a little bit overwhelming, a little bit intimidating perhaps. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, those kind of things are now coming into play. We could also talk about video being a large part of selling also. Certainly things salespeople need to get their head around if they're going to be current, if they're going to be relevant. And then the change element, this is going to break down into kind of the sense, the stance, and the speed that people deal with change. So the sense of change, by this what I mean is whether people are sensing change and feeling it. Some people are almost oblivious to the things that are going on which are changing the way in which we need to operate. Now, some things it's clear that things have happened which have changed how we work. But I'm sometimes wondering how that filters down and whether people are actually changing the way they operate. I always think of that analogy with this of boiling a frog. Throw a frog in boiling water, it jumps out. However, start a frog off in cold water, gently heat that up, make it warmer and warmer and warmer until it boils. The frog doesn't notice that there's a difference. It boils to death. I mean, it's a horrible analogy, but it's one that makes a lot of sense. Sometimes we're like that frog. It's getting warmer and warmer and warmer, and we're not noticing. We're sticking with the stuff we've always done. It's not being effective. This is linked to the stance that people have on sales. And it's interesting to try to work out whether you're a sales initiator or a sales resistor. Initiators love change. They see it as opportunity. They want to get hold of it. They want to do stuff with it. Resistors will push back. They won't like change. They'll try everything to dig their heels in and stay in the way that they've always been working. They're ends of the spectrum. In the middle, we'll see people who adapt. And so this is about how fast we can adapt. How fast can we do that? We think about the theory of evolution. We think about what Darwin talked about. He talked about it's not the fittest, it's not the most intelligent, it's not the strongest. It's the ones that are able to adapt that will have longevity. So the speed of change, again, it's another thing that we need to understand, how fast things are actually happening. Now, things are just speeding up. It's getting quicker and quicker and quicker. It's at this point I tend to think of Willy Wonka, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think about Willy Wonka is in the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where they go into that tunnel, they're on the boat. And there's Willy Wonka, and he's talking about there's no earthly way of knowing which direction we are going. There's no knowing where we're rowing or the way the river's flowing. Is it raining? Is it snowing? The wind is blowing. It speeds up. It speeds up. There's a hurricane are blowing. There's a speck of light is showing. The danger must be growing. That, I think, is how we are. We're kind of caught in this tunnel where stuff is speeding up. If we can react to it, there's great opportunity. If we don't, if we get overwhelmed, we can get left behind. And I do have a genuine concern that some salespeople are going to miss the bus. I really don't want that stuff to happen. We don't want salespeople to get left behind because they're not able to adapt. They're not able to make the changes, to make the evolutions, to be relevant, to be current. So how can we do stuff? How can we do stuff? Well, we can adapt to change in each of those areas. We can adapt to customer change, the climate change, and changing change. So let's have a brief think about how we can do this. Again, stuff that I'm covering in the book and helping people to understand. So when we talk about customers being more advanced, further down the buying cycle, having more information, trying to self-diagnose, one of the things that we can do is we can start to align with them. We can start to make sure that we're doing the things that make most sense for them, and whether that's fitting in with a process that they're comfortable with, or guiding them through a process because it might be something they don't understand how to do. That's where we can be far more useful, far more relevant to them. When we think about this bias or this demanding approach that salespeople have, this is where we need to think about how do we balance up the way in which we operate? How can we do the things which make most sense to them? And when we're thinking about this confusion that customers have, as a salesperson, we can help them clarify. Now, I talked about the VUCA model. There's a fantastic model that was developed in the 80s by a guy called Bob Johansson, called VUCA Prime. And what this does is it matches the elements of VUCA in ways in which you can kind of counter them. Volatility, it's countered by giving vision. Uncertainty by understanding, complexity with clarity, and the ambiguity by agility. A salesperson can massively add value, I believe, in helping bring those to the party in their discussions with customers. That's a very modern way of selling when we talk about adding value. So that's certainly things that we can do as salespeople to be more modern and become more buyer-centric in the way that we deal with customers. When we think about the climate, the sales climate, it's about contextual judgment. It's about thinking about the best way to operate that's going to make most sense for customers and for self. So when we're thinking about the type of sale, it's about picking a way that works. It works for yourself and for the customers. So it's about transforming a sales approach into something that is relevant, is consistent. When we think about the techniques we use, it's about tailoring the approaches, is taking the things which are going to work, which are useful, which are helpful, and using those on a consistent basis. And when we think about technology, this is about us taking control of the technology, not letting it lead us, not letting it frighten us, but using it to do the things it's designed for. Technology can do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. So embracing that and thinking about what our TQ is. Now, I talk about PQ in book number 1, which is partnering skills. Justin Michael's written an excellent book about technical sales, and he talks about TQ. So think about how can we raise our technological quotient to be using these things to help us in what it is that we're doing. So broad ways in which we can counter these. It's not something we should be frightened of. I'm a glass half full sort of person, and I really do think massive opportunity as a sales professional to be able to step up and really make a difference for customers. The changing change. So this is about being savvy about what's going on. So it's just understanding, is the water boiling around me? Is it something that I need to adapt to? Is it something I need to change? And how can I do that? I like to think about the stance that we have with changes to be smooth in the way that we adapt. Now, whether it's initiator, whether it's adapter, then it's something that we certainly want to try and make the journey for ourselves and our customers as easy as possible. And with speed, we need to be slick. Slickness in selling. Interesting word, perhaps, because slickness, when we talk about someone who's slick, I looked this up when I was writing a book, and it talks about, is in the book, I'm just going to look down at my notes here. It says, slickness, hanky-panky, hocus-pocus, jiggery-pokery, skullduggery, trickery. I am not preaching any of those. Slickness could also be used to indicate clever. And that is how I want you to take this. Smoothness and slickness together, well, the way I feel this is, and the way we want to work with customers is we want to give them this limousine ride. So think about, we're putting them in a Maybach, we're sat together with them, we're there, we're in luxury, the thing, it glides, it takes off. We barely notice, but these things can go really fast. If we can sit our customers beside us and work like that, that's a way that's going to help us be really, really effective. So use those words advisedly, the slickness, the smoothness, and the speed, but we can definitely give customers a fantastic experience with that way of working.